All right, so let's just talk about Fracture. So Fracture is just a perfect representation of how game companies used to take risks and try out ideas and push technologies rather than regurgitating the same remakes, remasters, and sequels that we've grown accustomed to. It was released for the Xbox 360 and PlayStation 3 on October 7th of 2008, and it was developed by Day One Studios and published by LucasArts of all companies. Before working on Fracture, Day One Studios had previously worked on the MechAssault series and helped with the Xbox 360 and PlayStation 3 ports for the first entry in the Fear series. For LucasArts, well, you know them from the Star Wars series, obviously, and Fracture was supposed to be a new IP to help kind of create some diversity in their portfolio. And Fracture came out just a little bit before The Force Unleashed came out, so that tells you about where we were at with Star Wars games at the time. But of course, with LucasArts involved, they really wanted to focus on creative gameplay rather than the bog standard shooters of the time. Announced in 2006, Fracture immediately drew the eyes of the industry by showing off the terrain deformation mechanic that would be central to the gameplay. I can remember seeing this trailer and being pretty excited about the game. The idea of terrain deformation and destruction physics in games was something that felt like a really far off dream to us back in 2006. And really, the only memorable games that had something like it from back then were like Black for the original Xbox in 2006. There's the original Red Faction all the way back in 2001. And in 2007, of course, we had Crysis, but I didn't have a computer that was capable of making that sacrifice. Speaking of, I still haven't played any games in the Crysis series. Let me know if I should. And also, within a year of Fracture's release, we were blessed with Battlefield Bad Company and Red Faction Guerrilla, two games with excellent destructible environments. And I just want to give a little bit more history before we jump into the game. In June of 2008, LucasArts laid off somewhere around 85 of its nearly 300 employees. One of those people went and reported to Kotaku that the soon-to-be released Fracture wasn't affected by the layoffs, but that the game was, and I quote, an absolute piece of garbage. So that spicy quote really made the rounds and it shed a negative light on the game, but there was really no way that we were just going to take a quote like that from a fired employee without some grain of salt. A couple of months later, on September 18th, just 3 weeks before the game was set to release, a demo was uploaded to Xbox Live and was available on the PlayStation Network. And the demo was pretty awesome. People were really excited about the game. But then the reviews started to roll in. And yeah, maybe that fired employee was correct. IGN was giving it a 5.9, GameSpot gave it a 6, and it earned a staggering 4 from Eurogamer. So they were all saying the same thing: don't buy this game. I did a little digging and I really couldn't find any sales figures, but it's estimated that the game sold only about 300,000 units at the highest number. I think most conservative estimates have it around 150,000, and there were just so many things going against it. I mean, in 2008, we had so many incredible games. There was Gears of War 2, Fallout 3, Call of Duty World at War, Far Cry 2, Left 4 Dead, Dead Space, Saints Row 2, Resistance 2, Fable 2, Mortal Kombat vs. DC Universe. Oh, and there was this one game that I played the most, and it helped kickstart my YouTube channel and send me down this nostalgia trip: Tom Clancy's End War. And that's me just naming a few. There are definitely some other games that came out in late 2008, early 2009 that would have been some games that you would have bought instead of Fracture. They really could not have picked a worse release window, but they also double dipped on the bad decisions and charged $60 for this piece of shit. Despite my initial excitement, I never played it when it first came out. I never really heard anything about it other than the demo, and it sort of just faded from memory pretty quickly. But that cover art and the logo design, for some reason, they've always drawn my eye. And I can remember seeing it on store shelves and always having it on my mental backlog, but never really having a desire to actually play it. And now that I have this YouTube channel and I really enjoy making videos about games like this from that Xbox 360 era, I'm doing my best to document my experience playing these games that I missed out over all those years. If you've been following the channel, you might have noticed that I put up a lot of community polls asking you guys to pick the games for my upcoming videos. And that's just my way of letting you guys help me sort through my growing backlog
Science, damn you, Alliance!
And the Alliance wants to prevent a civil war, so they send in a force to San Francisco to capture the leader of the Pacificans, known as General Sheridan. So yeah, it's one of those stories. Kind of reminds me of that one friend that would get drunk and then just go off on like a 3-hour tangent about this book idea that you know they'll never actually make. You know who you are. So this is our main character, Mason Briggs. No, wait, actually, Mason Briggs is the generic ass name that they used during development before they changed it to Jet Brody. So Sergeant Jet Brody is guided by Colonel Lawrence. The plan is to meet General Sheridan at Alcatraz and accept his surrender. Jet is set down on his own, and after a brief tutorial, we set off toward the objective and learn that we have a gun that's called the Entrencher. Using the right bumper and left bumper, you can raise or lower the terrain and create new paths. And before we get too much further into this, I just want to point out that all of this footage is recorded from my Xbox 360. This is on the slim model, if that makes any difference really. Fracture isn't part of the backwards compatible list, so it's not playable on Xbox One or Series X. So this is the best we can get with graphics. As we reach this tutorial area, we use the Entrencher to reach this crate of grenades. And apparently the grenades also have terrain deformation mechanics, and I don't really understand how this makes the grenades any better than just normal grenades. Then they have you use one of the grenades to blow open this wall, and it shows off the destruction physics. Once we're up top, we can find a rocket launcher and we blow up one of the legs of this water tower to make it fall. Inside the water tower is a grenade launcher. This grenade launcher is pretty cool. The grenades are sticky and you can detonate them by pressing X and they all blow up sequentially. You use them to destroy the supports of this landing pad and the chopper falls and blows up the building next to it. Then we find another grenade type called the spike grenade. This is used to raise terrain and create bridges in the environment. Climbing up, we find yet another grenade because there needs to be 4 freaking grenades in this game. This one acts like a regular grenade, but it also raises the terrain around it. And I really couldn't figure out the difference between this grenade and the other grenades, so I usually just throw whichever I have available. We're then supposed to grab this sniper rifle and shoot some explosive barrels that are up on these massive scramblers that the Pacificans have set up. And after taking down the scramblers, Lawrence and the rest of the squad come down and they meet up with General Sheridan. What's really funny about these cutscenes is that the camera is stabilized to the characters, and this should be one of the biggest red flags that we're playing a shitty game. Once you notice it, you can't unsee it. Lawrence orders Sheridan to surrender, and Sheridan makes some comments about how he and Lawrence used to both be generals 5 years ago, but Lawrence got demoted to colonel. Then Sheridan does the obvious thing and says,
"You're not taking me alive."
Then one of Sheridan's troops fires a rocket launcher at Jet and at Lawrence, and of course they both survive with most of the squad being wiped out. Sheridan then runs and hides like a little bitch as Jet follows him inside the prison. So inside the prison, there are these fences that have to be jumped over. So it's pretty cool. You use the Entrencher to create a ramp and jump over them. And it's pretty cool that they show this soldier is being locked down by a turret. So we have to use the Entrencher to create cover for him and Jet to get by. Inside the room, we use the entrencher to create more cover and use it as a ramp to reach the upper level. Up on top, we blow up these barrels to collapse the ceiling and give us a great vantage point to kill the enemies below. Eventually, we find Sheridan's transport, but he escapes. We also find a new weapon, the ST-4. This gun fires an underground rocket that can detonate as it travels. When it detonates, it raises the terrain and it sends objects and enemies flying through the air. So we use that to hold out against the enemies until our transport can reach us. Then we use the entrencher to reach the dropship. Jet gets picked up by a friend named Juice, one of the few named characters in this game. But what's really funny is we never actually see Juice's face. Then the transport gets shot down, because of course it does. And now we need to take out the anti-aircraft guns in the area, so we fight through the Pacifican Raptors. These enemies are pretty cool. They have shields and they have these single-shot weapons. The single-shot weapon, called the Raptor Rifle, ends up being my favorite weapon for the whole game. And so we fight our way through to the first AA gun, and to destroy it, we have to use the entrencher to raise the gun until it hits the shields above, making it explode. Again, pretty cool that we get to use all this terrain deformation in the environment to complete our objectives. So then we push on to hit the next AA gun and we do the same. And then we are able to make our way across this bridge to the landing zone where we fight through to the next objective. Using a spike grenade, we lift this grate covering the hole into the facility, and then we're able to drop down into the tunnels.
Is it bad luck to mention to you guys that I'm 2 weeks away from getting out?
Stow it. Eyes and ears.
So we fight through the tunnels and into this facility when we come across a storage room, and the storage room is protected by a shield, so we have to use the spike grenades to knock the power sources off the walls so that they blow the room open. Once we're outside, we have to face off against a Pacifican dropship, and it starts gunning me down, so I use the entrencher to create some cover, and I gotta say, this is a pretty cool idea. Using the Bangalore rocket launcher, we blast that bitch out of the sky. Then we're presented with a new enemy type, the Hydra. These guys jump all around and they shoot rockets at you. Then we make our way to the facility. Inside is an elevator that takes us down into a sewer level, and it can only go downhill from here, right? While on the elevator headed down, Lawrence and Jet talk about how Sheridan must have been planning for this war for a while now. Lawrence says he bets Sheridan has been planning this since his daughters died, and that Sheridan never forgave the federal government for outlawing the genetic augmentations that would have saved them. So inside the tunnels, we plan to clear out the Pacificans. We ride these mine carts and we kill the enemies on the ground. At the end of the path, we get closed into a room with these shotgun wielding enemies, but we just blast them down with the grenade launcher. Pushing on, we have to get past these shield doors, and to do that, we have to lower the terrain that's under these power connectors with our entrencher. Then we head forward and we throw a spike grenade under the main power lines to reconnect them and restart the mine carts and head further into the facility. Then Colonel Lawrence patches in a new strength augment to our suit to give us more power for our punches. Then we fight our way through some enemies, and damn it, I always forget to switch out my equipped grenades, and I always will accidentally throw spike grenades all over the battlefield. After getting through those guys, we head up into this room, and some Hydra enemies with rocket launchers show up, and we deal with them. Then we push into this room, and they have these things called hydro balls.
Those are balls.
The hydro balls are explosives. So in order to destroy the machines, we have to make a ball fall down from the ceiling and use terrain deformation to build ramps for the balls to roll straight into the machines. It's way harder than it should be. After destroying the Pacifican machines, the door opens up and we fight through some more Pacificans to reach the exit. Once we get out of the facility, we hop into a dropship to get across the ravine, and we get a moment where we get to sit in a chopper shooting a grenade launcher and raining death on the enemy. Then we head over to the elevator and we get to head up topside. Lawrence orders some jets to use their bunker busters with terrain deformation bombs to destroy the facility. Mission 4 starts with us being attacked by a dropship that we destroy with a rocket launcher. Then we find what is definitely the best weapon in the entire game, and what I think is probably one of the coolest weapons I've ever seen in games. The vortex grenade creates this swirling vortex that sucks in enemies and objects in the environment before it explodes. It's so fucking badass. Heading through the facility, this lady starts talking in our head.
They're raising alerts.
And fuck, I forgot about the spike grenades again. We make our way inside and find this lady who talks to us telepathically, then just runs and disappears. Then we head to investigate the crash site and we find these enemies. These are called Shermans because they hit like tanks. And these bad boys are really fucking annoying. They fire these green grenade launchers and they are just huge bullet sponges. Then we get the next suit upgrade unlocked, and this one is a double jump. It uses terrain beneath us to push us up when we jump. So we jump across this gap to the other side of the bridge. Pushing on, we find another vortex grenade and we admire the carnage again. Then this dropship shows up and I ended up running out of rockets and it killed me when I tried to run back for more. But hey, at least we get to throw another vortex grenade. This time I hang all the way back and I stay behind cover to knock it down. As we make our way forward, we use a spike grenade to open another hatch and drop in, and we're rewarded with a new shield upgrade. But I don't ever really feel like there's any benefits to these upgrades that we're being given. At no point do I ever feel like they're making us any stronger. After we get through the tunnels, we end up using the rocket launcher to knock some boulders down onto the enemies, which I think is pretty cool that you can interact with the environment like this to kill enemies. Then we reach the supports for the Golden Gate Bridge, and our objective is to remove these scrambler devices that are attached by throwing spike grenades underneath them. And then a cutscene plays of the bridge being destroyed. And suddenly a massive amount of seismic activity starts, and holy shit, that's awesome.
I'm gonna need a bigger gun.
Jet runs inside of a cave to escape it, and as we reach a dropship to extract, the foot of the robot crushes it. So then we end up climbing up inside of its leg and we ride it to regroup with an Alliance squad. And I end up getting killed by one of these shotgun guys. And when I respawn, it puts me right in front of the guy that was shooting at me and he kills me again. Then I respawn in the exact same spot and I die again. And fuck, man, this is such an archaic checkpoint system. If you've ever played a game on an emulator, it's like using the save state feature. Every single thing is in the exact same spot as when you hit the checkpoint. Eventually, I survive and I meet up with the squad, and then we're ordered to get back inside of the thing so we can gather more intel. So we get back on the Dreadnought and we ride it all the way to an LZ. Then we hold out against an enemy assault until a dropship can come in and rescue us. So now we're into Act 2, and Jet and a squad are being dropped off at a Pacifican Black Site research facility. And inside the facility, we find this weird bug creature that's called a creeper. And Lawrence tells us that these are failed genetic experiments. They burrow under the ground and they pop out to attack you when they get close. To kill them, you have to use the entrencher to deform the ground and make them pop out. Then you can shoot them while they're stunned. Eventually we push on and we're told that we have to destroy these 3 generators, and then we're also tasked with destroying the communications arrays. There's a new weapon along the way that we find called the ALM-37. This can freeze enemies. After about 15 minutes of trying to deal with all the enemies in this room, I finally get them all taken care of and I have to figure out how to destroy the radar array, and I honestly just couldn't figure it out, so I ended up looking up a walkthrough online. Thank God there are like 3 other people who have played this game and recorded it. So it turns out that you're supposed to raise this shutter by raising the power connectors on these pillars. Once those are open, we head underground and we raise the terrain under the generators so that they get crushed and we make them explode. This causes the heat to expel from the radar and burn a hole in the roof of the facility for us to enter. And as we head forward, we find another new enemy type. The cheetahs are fast bastards who teleport all around the room and avoid your shots. After we get through all of them, we head in through this next door and Lawrence drop pods us a new item. This item is called a shield buster, and it needs to be rolled into the shield doors in order to blow up the shields. We have to do this a couple of times to get into the research facility, but once we're inside, we come across this massive new enemy that's called a bola, and this big beast does exactly as you'd expect. It sprints at you and you just have to dodge out of the way and then shoot it in the back. It also throws these boulders that can home in on you, which is really tough to avoid. It takes me a couple of tries to beat it, but I ended up grabbing one of the shotguns in the room and using the double jump whenever it charges or throws boulders at me. After a little while of this, the terrain is all sorts of bumpy and it makes it kind of difficult to navigate, but I end up just shooting it in the back a few times and I kill it. It drops a new weapon that's called a Rhino, and the Rhino is used to create the boulders that it was throwing at me. I never used this weapon once. Then they end up dropping a vehicle for me to drive, and fuck man, this thing sucks ass. It's kind of cool because the turret has a seat for someone to jump in and shoot with you while you're driving. But in the single player, the AI doesn't hop along with you, so the gun acts as an auto gun. I have a feeling that they just did this so that way they didn't have to program the AI to know how to hop into the vehicle and ride along with you. And really this thing it's so awkward to control. It has an entrencher on it, so it can create ramps for you to boost and jump over, but the jump just sends you flying through the air. It doesn't feel right with how far you end up traveling when you do the jumps. It can also dig down to get under doors. So we pretty much just drive through the facility, digging under walls, jumping over ramps until we reach this spot where we can create a ramp and get out of the vehicle and into the facility. Inside, we find the supercomputer, but to deactivate the shields, we have to go into this room with 4 of the bolas in tanks. Using the entrencher, we destroy the power for the tanks, freeing the bolas, but luckily they were already dead or they were just not fully formed yet, and we don't have to fight them. But one of the bolas was healthy enough to survive, so we end up fighting it off, and it's the exact same fight we just got through. And there's also another shotgun in this room, so it doesn't take us any time at all. After we kill it, we end up heading over to the supercomputer, and the room starts filling with the fumes from that green toxin that we've been seeing as we've been driving through the facility. Jet downloads the schematics for the Dreadnought and discovers that the green toxin is called XP61, and Sheridan plans to disperse it from the Dreadnought. And this apparently triggers a self-destruct sequence, so we end up hopping into another vehicle and try to escape the facility. And the whole time, this lady will not shut the hell up.
They're loading my cell into a dropship. You have to get to me before they take off. I know you can hear me. Come to my voice. That's it. Keep going. We don't have much time. You're close.
Shut up!
Finally, we reach the end and we discover that Sheridan is at this research facility and he's loading XP61 into a dropship, but he just leaves the hostage behind. So we end up crashing the party to rescue the woman named Mariko. She says she's not telepathic, but apparently she can communicate similar to how bats and dolphins communicate. I guess some of the Pacificans evolved to have this new method of communication, and Sheridan was just using her to communicate with the Dreadnought if communication systems were disrupted. All right, so now we're into Act 3 already. Thank God, we're almost done with this. The Dreadnought has made its way all the way from San Francisco to Washington, D.C., and Sheridan is one step closer to releasing XP61 on the city. Jet and Mariko are riding in Juice's dropship to reach the city when they get shot down again. And there's not a whole lot to say for this Washington, D.C. part, so I'm just gonna speed through to the ending. You're not missing anything. Our goal here is to reach the White House. We fight through city streets, alleyways, parks, all that kind of stuff. There is a new enemy that gets introduced called a spike hydra. They are pretty much just the same as the other hydras, but whenever they're on the spikes, they're invulnerable. So I end up using one of the other weapons in the game that's called a lodestone. It doesn't do any damage to enemies, but it just pulls everything in the area in towards it, so it keeps them from climbing up onto the spikes. Then the Dreadnought shows up and it smashes the White House. For some reason, I just didn't even notice this when I was playing the game. I just thought it was smashing some random building. Oops. Brady falls into the tunnels under the White House. And so we have to fight our way through to reach these rooms that have power generators, and we have to restore the power so that it can ignite the shields that are protecting Washington, D.C. Again, I just completely didn't even notice that was what we were doing. I just was pushing on to the objectives. To do so, we need to get all of these lasers to reach the walls that power the generators. So we use the terrain deformation to clear the path. There are a few of the rooms like this, with some of them needing you to bounce the laser off of debris to reach the target. It's kind of reminding me of this old Dexter's Laboratory game that I used to play on CartoonNetwork.com back when I was a kid. And there's like 5 or 6 of these rooms where you gotta make the lasers hit the generators, and it takes a good 20 to 30 minutes to get through this, and it's just repetitive as all hell. The last room has a bola in it just to spice things up, and really it's just the same old, same old. You just blast it with a shotgun. Once all the generators are powered, the city's shield is restored. Then Brody and Lawrence figure out that Sheridan is waiting until the rest of the Alliance troops are in the city to release XP-61. So we're sent off to fight through the city to rendezvous with a demo team that has some advanced charges for killing the Dreadnought. We find the demo team is dead, and we grab the charges and we fight our way to the Dreadnought. Getting onto the Dreadnought is actually pretty difficult. There are a couple of Hydras and a bunch of enemies protecting it. Eventually, we climb on, we kill off the enemies, and we throw a charge to destroy the Dreadnought. Sheridan is captured and Lawrence confronts him. And these moronic Alliance jizrags somehow fail to handcuff or pat down Sheridan, and he slips a syringe of XP-61 out of his sleeve and kills Lawrence and the guards. Then he turns into a bola. So for the final battle, you'll be fighting General Sheridan as a bola. There are also some creepers that come into the room just to keep you on your toes. There aren't any shotguns in the room to make this easier. In fact, the only weapon in the room is the weakest machine gun in the entire game. So this is gonna take a lot longer than usual. So the whole time during this fight, Sheridan is just constantly chattering about how our technology can't save us. After doing enough damage, he spawns these spikes. He ends up drawing energy from the spikes and heals up. At no point was this ever explained. So I fought him for a good 30 minutes, and I'm not kidding, I watched the footage. There's 30 minutes of me fighting him before I end up looking up to figure out what you're supposed to do, and apparently, you're supposed to destroy the spikes to stop him from recharging. It wasn't even obvious that he was recharging. He just looks like he's invulnerable because they just told us that the spike hydras were made invulnerable. Eventually, after surviving the creepers, I kill him to end the game. Sheridan falls over dead and he returns back into his human form. So I guess he can just change at will, but the other bolas couldn't. Then Jet returns to Lawrence and he sits over Lawrence's body with Mariko as Alliance jets fly overhead. Then we get a final news broadcast saying that both sides are now negotiating for a repeal of the law against genetic modification so they can bring an end to the hostilities. Then it zooms out and starts giving broadcasts from other parts of the world where countries are deciding whether they should ally with the Pacificans to advance genetic evolution or with the Alliance and focus on technology. And the world fills with orange or blue to represent the two factions, and then it cuts to credits. Like, what the fuck was that ending? I didn't leave anything out. That was the whole ending. That felt like a rushed ending for a high school creative writing project, not something made by LucasArts of all companies. What a terrible fucking game. 6 is way too high of a praise for this piece of shit. I know that the campaign is supposed to be a setup for the multiplayer. I mean, the devs even said so themselves in interviews. And I know when it comes to videos like this, I usually spend a little bit of time trying to dig into the multiplayer, but unfortunately there's just no videos out there and there's no one really playing this game, so I can't look too much into the multiplayer. I'm not all that upset about it anyway because, like I said, only about 150,000 people played this game. If you go and you look at the leaderboards, you can see people on the first page or the second page only have games played in the double digits. So no one played this game. If you know anything about the multiplayer and you love it, let me know in the comments below. But like, what the fuck? This was so bad. Jet, Brody, and all the other characters are just laughably forgettable. The mechanics don't even evolve past the first hour of gameplay. I'm pretty sure the only upgrade you really get is a double jump. And the story is just overly complicated, yet somehow incredibly underbaked. It's a mess. This feels like one of those fake games that you see people playing in TV shows and in movies. Honestly, I'm just really glad that I got to play this game thanks to you guys supporting the channel, just so I can at least cross it off my list and throw it into the shit pile once and for all and forget about it. Well, anyway, I don't want to talk about this piece of shit game anymore. If you liked this video, be sure to hit that subscribe button below because there will definitely be more videos like this one going through games from the Xbox 360 that I might have missed or that you might have missed too. Some of them might be some nostalgia trips for you, some of them might be nostalgia trips for me, some might even be a chance for you to get an abridged playthrough so you don't have to waste your time like I did. So with that, I'm going to leave you with a link to one of my other videos so that you can wash a taste of this piece of shit from your memory.